The 2023 NBA draft was always going to be an incredibly interesting class for a lot of different reasons. We've got Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller, each of these guys with very different stories, very different roles to begin their NBA careers. And a handful of games into their careers, they certainly have not disappointed in terms of giving us plenty of things to talk about. Quickly, I have something for you. Playback.tv/sportinglogically. If you guys want to have an opportunity to hang out with me, watch some NBA games with me, the rest of the community, I'm going to be there this Friday. Playback.tv/sportinglogically. Go join the room. It's going to be an awesome time. It's something I'm going to do weekly from now on, but the first one is this Friday. You can watch the games. We're going to jump around to all the in-season tournament games. There's going to be a chat there. There's going to be all kinds of fun stuff going on. Go join the room, playback.tv/sportinglogically. Check out the link in the description. Be there on Friday. Now for Wemby, I could probably make a video every single week about Wemby and about all these different things that he's doing, how impactful he's been. It's obviously been a bit of a weird situation in San Antonio in terms of actually trying to win games because the guards are so bad and the team around him is something that they're still trying to get figured out. But there were people that were concerned that he wouldn't start very well because his body wasn't NBA ready. He was going to be too skinny. The offensive stuff wasn't going to translate. He's been incredible. That's not really what we're here to talk about today, because the main debate of the class, the thing that people spent the most time talking about outside of Wemby, was Scoot Henderson versus Brandon Miller at number 2 and number 3. Now, Brandon Miller ends up going 2, Scoot Henderson ends up going 3, and the fact that Scoot Henderson ends up in Portland, I think, really accelerated the idea of Damian Lillard requesting a trade from Portland, and really was kind of the first domino of the entire offseason when Portland ended up with the 3rd overall pick when they jumped up in the lottery, and when it became clear that they were going to be able to add Scoot rather than just Brandon Miller, because Scoot is, at the time at least, thought of as a little bit better of a franchise cornerstone type of guy, someone you want to kind of start a new era with, and that was kind of the first domino of that. And once it became clear that Charlotte was going to take Brandon Miller at number 2 overall, partially because they didn't want the weird fit of LaMelo alongside Scoot, both of those guys being ball dominant players, trying to figure out how that combination would work, and also they just liked Brandon Miller, then the takes really started to fly, because there were some people out there, I wasn't one of them, but there were some people out there that thought that Scoot Henderson had a case to be the 1st overall pick over Victor Wembanyama, and there were a lot of people that really liked Scoot. I liked Scoot a lot, and I still like Scoot a lot, but to begin their careers, this has been already a very back and forth situation, because if you go back to Summer League, I was there, I saw Brandon Miller in person, and he was terrible. Like, just did not look comfortable at all, was forcing things, couldn't make any shots, and Scoot got hurt early on in Summer League, but even just the small flashes that we saw from him, he was really good. And of course, that immediately started all the takes of Brandon Miller's terrible, what a mistake by Charlotte, and it honestly was about as bad of a debut as you could expect from a 2nd overall pick that a lot of people thought was going to be good initially. And now that we've gotten the season started, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't just a little bit confused about the way that Scoot Henderson has looked in Portland. Now, granted, none of these guys, none of the top 3 picks, none of really the top 5 picks are in a position to succeed immediately. They might still succeed because they're just that good and they're just that talented as prospects, but in both Portland and Charlotte, there's a lot of flaws with each of these rosters. I will say that my expectations for Scoot were higher than Brandon Miller, because the team, once they made the Dame trade, seemed to be set up really well for Scoot to perform well. Obviously, the team is young, but they do have DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant. They've got some talent on the wings in comparison to a place like Charlotte, where the talent level to me was just night and day. Even between two teams that aren't going to be very good this year, the surrounding pieces seem to be more quality in Portland, and so my expectations were higher for Scoot. And it's just been a little bit weird, and I don't know if it's trying to figure out the hierarchy of the team, who's going to be running most of the offense. You have Anthony Simons there. It takes up a good amount of on-ball stuff. Shaedon Sharpe has had some really good moments to begin the season, and Scoot was always going to be this like primary offensive guy that gets the ball a lot in ball screens and creates, and his shot just hasn't been falling. Some of the decision-making stuff has been weird, and kind of his whole thing, because he is a smaller player, was that his impact was going to be immediate. Like, Brandon Miller was going to be a little bit more the project, and so to see Scoot struggle so much in the beginning is a concern. Now, granted, smaller players, and especially point guards, they're supposed to struggle when you get to the NBA. It's supposed to be a difficult transition. It's supposed to take some time, and especially a player like Scoot that doesn't rely a ton on his jump shot and relies on decision-making, getting to the rim, learning ball screens and things like that at the NBA level, it's going to take some time. So I'm not freaking out. I'm not saying that Scoot is a bust, but on the other hand, Brandon Miller's been really good, and he's been good at stuff that I didn't expect him to be good at. Like, he basically didn't take mid-range jumpers at all in college. He's brought some of that stuff back. He's been creating in ball screens. He's been shooting the ball decently well. And defensively, there's an activity level and a length that is really, really exciting from him. And if every now and then, if you squint, you kind of look at some of the moves and some of the highlights from Brandon Miller, he kind of looks a little bit like a very, very young version of Paul George, which was one of the comps that people made for him pre-draft. And to already see those kinds of flashes in comparison to what has been a very slow start for Scoot Henderson to begin his career, it's definitely concerning. Now, a handful of NBA games does not make a career, and it's definitely possible that the perception of these two guys right now will completely flip 100 times throughout the season. And also, by the way, it's totally possible that they're both very, very good. One of them doesn't have to be bad in order for the other one to be good. But relative to where I expected them to be, given the situation in Portland, which again, it's not a great team, but the team was generally well set up for a rookie point guard to show at least some level of success. I know they've had injury issues. Every team in the league has had injury issues. Generally speaking, they were well set up for Scoot to have success, and it's concerning, certainly, that hasn't immediately translated, even though that is the case and Brandon Miller looked good. I'm not trying to make any kind of like full-fledged evaluation of either of these guys right now. It's just interesting how quickly things can change when you go back and think about where things were at when I was there at Summer League in Vegas, looking at Brandon Miller and thinking the confidence level, everything was just completely off for him. Now, if you're a fan of either of these teams, here's what I would say about each of these guys. For Charlotte, for Brandon Miller, I want to see him with the starters more. I want to see what his fit looks like alongside LaMelo. Can they start to build some kind of chemistry? He's been playing with the second unit a lot, which is good. It allows him to be more comfortable as like an on-ball creator type guy, but in the long term, you want him to figure out how to be a complementary player, not in like a role player sense, but in terms of playing off the ball, in terms of playing off of what LaMelo and some of the other guys are creating. I want to see more of that stuff, but if he continues to be active and engaged defensively, a lot of the offensive stuff he should figure out. I mean, he was a good offensive player in college, and a lot of the jump shooting stuff and just all these shots he was missing in Summer League, eventually you would expect that stuff to get figured out, as it has a little bit to begin this season. So definitely things are looking better for Brandon Miller than I would have expected to begin his career, especially considering the situation that he's in, and I want to continue to see progress. And then for Scoot, if you're a Portland fan and maybe you're freaking out, you've got some of your friends telling you, oh man, you guys were talking all this stuff about how good Scoot was going to be. Yes, I expected him to be better. I expected him to be better because of his experience in the G League, because of how good he looked, even in a very small sample size in Summer League in Vegas, and because of how the team has been set up around him. However, some of the offensive numbers for really everybody in Portland, whether it be because of injuries or otherwise, have been a little bit weird. They've been a little bit off, and I wouldn't be freaking out by any means. If there's a player that it's going to take a little bit of time to get stuff figured out to begin your NBA career, it's the 6'2" point guard that can't really shoot the ball extremely well. Like, those guys are going to need to take some time to figure out the speed of the game, to really, get better at their decision making in ball screens. And especially if you're someone like Scoot that long term you're hoping is like the primary offensive creator of the team, all he needs is reps. He just needs to play. He needs to continue to get more accustomed to some of the guys around him. They'll get better spacing long term as well. And I still would feel confident about Scoot Henderson as like a cornerstone franchise player alongside guys like Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, DeAndre Ayton, as they continue to grow and build some things. And you also have to keep in mind, for Scoot specifically, not to make excuses for him, but it has been a weird offseason because they've been waiting on the Damian Lillard thing to get resolved, and it's just been a little bit of a weird situation, one that wasn't resolved until a few weeks before the season even started. And with Chauncey Billups there and with the coaching staff trying to get all those moving pieces figured out, I fully expect that by the end of the season, Scoot Henderson kind of has like a Cade Cunningham level rookie year where he's good. Maybe some of the efficiency numbers aren't great, but it's clear that in the long term, when the pieces are better, he's going to continue to elevate the team. And then, of course, if you're a Spurs fan, you're freaking out because you have Wemby, and that's the top three of this draft. There's going to continue to be conversations and debates about each one of these guys, but I'm really excited to see them continue to grow because the path towards every one of them being really, really good is clear right now, and that's what I want. I want more talent added to the league, and I want the rookies to succeed, and I think they will continue to succeed.